Today we are tying a Elk Hair Caddis. I've got a number 14 Daiichi dry fly hook. I'm using 6/0 thread, and I'm going to start by attaching my thread to the hook, just using nice tight wraps over the top away from me so I can tie over itself, and then I can clip off the excess. First thing I'm going to do is just position my thread somewhere there in the middle, and I'm going to tie in a strand of small copper wire. And let's just lay that copper wire right along the side of the hook, and then I can tie it down along the side of the hook. And I'm going to leave a small piece, maybe 3 inches or so, hanging out the back. Okay, now what we'll do is we're going to use some dubbing, some fine dry fly dubbing, to build a body going forward. So we'll add a small piece of dubbing and carefully spin that on to make a nice even amount there, and we'll just dub the body going forward. We're going to try to taper that just slightly, meaning we're going to get a little bit thicker as we go towards the front. It's always easier to add a little as you go. It's not so much to take off, so try to avoid using too much, and that's a common error that I notice when people are just starting with dubbing, is have a tendency to put too much. I'm only going to coat evenly a couple inches of that thread, and then I can really control how much. Now I'm going to make sure I stop about an eye length back. I'm not going to go right up to the eye. Let's just come back a little bit just to continue with that taper. And that's where we want to stop. Now that's where we're going to tie in our hackle. I have a piece of whiting saddle hackle. I'm going to tie that in so the top part is facing me. The underside is a little more dull, and the top side is a little more shiny. And I've just notched out a little piece of that stem that I can slide in there and capture and tie down nice and neat without crowding my head too much. And now we'll take that feather and we'll go over the top away from me, and we're going to just palmer that back towards the back of the fly, trying to make nice even spiral wraps all the way to the back. When we get to the back, let's hold that straight up in the air, and let's bring this wire and switch hands. Now I'll take this wire and we're going to counter wrap that going forward. So let's make 2 wraps right at the back, and then we'll carefully wrap over that going forward. So this is a fairly fine piece of wire. You don't want a real thick piece because it'll make this a little more difficult. And you can just tie the hackle into the back, that's fine too. So we're going to tie off that wire. Just hold it straight up in the air, and we'll just drop our thread over about 3 times. And now we can snip off that wire. And we can also snip off the hackle. If you do have a little sharp edge there of wire, let's just push that down with our thumbnail and make a couple more turns. Okay, now we're ready for the wing. One thing you can do too is just take your scissors and just make a little angle cut so that our elk hair will lay flat on top. Now the key to this fly is it's very easy to crowd your head, meaning you get a lot of materials up around the eye. So we're going to tie an elk wing right off, so try to keep that as clean as possible. What I have is just some nice straight elk hair, and we have to decide how much we're going to cut off there. I always say take your scissors and just come across here and try to get the first row and really get a scissor amount, and that's pretty close to about the right amount that you want. So we'll snip that off from the hide, and you're going to have a rough clump. Just hold it by the tips and clean out all that under fur. If you have a small comb, that makes things nicer. But we'll just carefully clean all that out, and it's ready for our hair stacker. So hopefully you have a nice hair stacker that we can lay that elk hair in there, tips down like that, and we'll just lightly tap that on the table. And then when I'm ready here, we'll just carefully pull the back end and slide the back end out very carefully. And it should expose those tips that we can get a hold of there with our left hand. And what we have is a nice little, like a paintbrush. So, all right, let's just measure that. So I want the tips to extend about to the end of the hook. And once I have that measurement, I can pinch that with my left hand and we're ready to tie that in. So let's make one full wrap, kind of loose, and then add just a little bit of tension, and those butts will begin to flare just slightly. Be careful though, you might break your thread if you pull too hard. Let's do another one, and let's do 3 right there before we even let go with our left hand. What happens is that elk hair wants to roll around the hook, so we want to keep it secured right on top. So now, before we do any more, let's pull all these butts back, and let's just make a couple of wraps underneath. And then I like to come right back over the top and make one more on top just to anchor that. And we'll bring it right back underneath. And now we're ready to whip finish. So we'll whip finish underneath all of that elk hair. If you need to, we can pull that elk hair back out of the way. And then we can throw a whip finish up under there. We can snip off the excess. Let's just pull all these butts back forward. And we'll just cleanly come right up in front of the eye of the hook and hit that with a little head cement. And we're ready to fish.